Welcome back to the Career Musician Podcast. After almost a year of being away, I'm so excited to bring you brand new content, starting with the Career Musician Spotlight, where we will feature a band or artist once a month to share their incredible stories IRL in real life, from their touring experiences, studio sessions, and much more. In addition, I'll be doing a deep dive monologue podcasts every week, breaking down the ins and outs of the industry from my 3 decades plus of experience. Why should that matter to you? Well, because my mission is simple: to empower musicians just like you with strategies for a sustainable career, where I teach you how to get the gig, keep the gig, and go beyond the gig. Simply put, we're here to help you make music your full-time business. Coming at you from PA Rehearsal Studios right here in Los Angeles, the official sponsor of the Career Musician is where we're recording this episode, and you can get an awesome discount with your band to rehearse. Stick around to the end and we'll tell you exactly how to do so. Now, on this episode, I am super stoked to have a tried and true career musician, rock star, Jed Elliott from the Struts, and his partner Chelsea Sabo, which, by the way, this episode is a double whammy because for those who have listened to the podcast before, you know I'm all about the motivation, and Chelsea is an executive life coach. We got a chance to sit down to hear all about their truth in this industry with their platform, The Musician's Journey. You are not going to want to miss this episode. It is jam-packed, so stick around and listen to the whole thing in its entirety. For that special discount to PA Rehearsal Studios, don't forget to subscribe, download, follow, and most of all, gang, don't be lame. Share the game with your friends, because there is room for all of us in this crazy biz that we call music. Earlier, speaking of cool, you were telling me a Foo Fighters story.
Yeah.
Dave and Taylor come into the dressing room.
This is our non-rock and roll story.
Knock over all the laptops. What is this crap? The guys came backstage.
They came in the room. We're playing Uno. It was like the least rock and roll thing ever. And it was like both Taylor and Dave just like, fuck me, guys. Like, is this what rock stars do now? This is pathetic. Like,
You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with Nomad.
500 million streams, opening for Guns N' Roses, The Who, Rolling Stones, and the Foo Fighters.
The Struts.
Jed Elliott and Chelsea Sabo, welcome to the Career Musician Podcast.
thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having us.
Chelsea is zooming in from Atlanta, her hometown, and Jed is here in real life, nonetheless. The rock star himself from the Struts, Jed Elliott. I'm like all fangirling over. Okay. And Chelsea Sabo, you know, an amazing career motivational, I would call you speaker, but I know it's well beyond that. Guys, first of all, I'm so happy that you're here. And secondly, I'm so happy that you have bridged the gap with music and mental wellness overall.
Yeah, with as far as the musician's journey is concerned, we kind of say our goal is to pioneer a new era of proactive mental health support, empowering musicians to achieve their artistic best and maintain rewarding, sustainable careers. And I'm going to pretend I committed that to memory as well, as you saw me read that off my laptop.
Well, see, I love that. And when I first found that out, that's when I got really excited, because by hearing your mission statement and then my mission statement, they are so close. They're very, similarly aligned. And I love that. Now, again, the reason why I especially love the musician's journey is because of what Chelsea, you're bringing to the table, balances out what Jed does so much. It really is the perfect balance. You have the music, out in the field doing the real thing musically, right? On stage, in the studio, and then you have the doing the real thing behind the scenes with mindset and personal growth, with what you're doing, Chelsea. So tell me, the musician's journey, let's start there. When did this come about? What was the impetus for the two of you to say, oh, we got to do this?
Should we start with my end and then kind of how we got introduced?
I think it's good place.
Wonderful. Yeah, so to start out, both my parents work in mental health, And there was always something very important to me, as well as being a bass player in a rock band, to do something that was also of service off stage as well. And I'd always had conversations and kind of been trying to clued up on taking care of my own well-being on the road, and would have so many conversations with so many of my peers and bands at different levels, right from when we started out in the early days at kind of 14 years old out on tour. And just checking in to be like, guys, this is pretty difficult, isn't it? Like, there's so much fun that we have, but there are so many unique challenges. And then as your band grows, you meet more people, it becomes so much more nuanced, and there's so many complex things and very unique things that we face in music. And so I'd had this goal to support my peers and other upcoming musicians. And it was in a conversation with one of my friends, Peter, who at the time was working for Shazam, and he was an amazing kind of champion when we first signed in the United States in 2015. He had us in the offices in Shazam, and we, at the time, I actually believe that we'd met Chelsea. So Chelsea, by the way, is Peter's wife. So that was the context I knew her in at the time. And so when we started having these conversations about, because Peter's one of my favorite businessmen in the world as well. He's one of the really good eggs in the music industry, and he's since been with Spotify and beyond that. And so when he said he heard that I wanted to do something in the mental health space, he was like, you have to connect with my wife, Chelsea, because she's been working on this in the kind of the career coaching executive world, and has now worked with a load of artists and is moving into that space with music as well. And it was one of those very serendipitous meets that we came together. Chelsea and I reintroduced and just had conversations kind of like we're having, where like we're just totally on the same page with the mission. And I'll hand it over to you, Chelsea, in a second. But I will add one thing that we've not really spoken about a ton, which is that Chelsea actually coached me first, because I was like, I want to have an idea of what it is you do. I want to be on the receiving end of this coaching before we partner. And we did 2 weeks of sessions, and I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And so everything, we would pause mid coaching where I would say, okay, I'm taking my coaching, my musician hat off right now. Let's pause. Let's write this down. How could this benefit other musicians? So it was quite an interesting process to build what then became, the DNA of the musician's journey.
The DNA of the musician's journey. It's like we were talking about when I was on your episode. How did this come about? You kind of look at what's happened behind you, and then it's a culmination. You put it together, and that's your offering, if you will. Serendipitous, by the way. Oh my gosh, just the way you say that word, it's like, wow, this guy's sexy. Okay,
I think you practice your English accent over lunch as well. It wasn't that good this morning. You're really leaning in.
All right, welcome to the Career Musician Podcast, episode number 169. A huge thanks to all of our current listeners, and to our new listeners. We're thrilled that you are here on the Career Musician, where we dive deep into the strategies that help you get the gig, keep the gig, and go beyond the gig. So, Chelsea, please tell us your perspective, how it was meeting Jed and going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the, we had met Jed through just Peter's work before, and I had known of him, but he was just really nice, and I could just tell he had such a passion for helping musicians and just on this mission. And it got me excited, and the opportunity to have worked with him and hear what he was facing and the elements that were coming up for him. In addition to, because of my husband's line of work, having an opportunity to speak very openly with a lot of other artists around their struggles and the things that they go through, I got a very deep, authentic, and comprehensive view of what challenges are for artists and musicians. And I think the thing that just really hit home was it's all the same. It just has a different costume. So, being an executive coach for 15 years, all of the core elements that I'm supporting and helping business individuals through are the same things that were coming up for artists when you get to the root element. And that's where I was like, really got excited about how can we partner and what does this look like?
I love that because it illustrates the fact that music is no different than any other space. We're dealing with the same issues as humans and business. The same things are going to be in front of us, right?
Yeah. And I think that human element of these are all things humans are facing and come up against. But a lot of the ones necessarily aren't things that when you're training to be a musician, when you're focusing on your music career, that you're like, oh, I really want to enhance my communication skills, or wow, where am I at regulating my emotions, or, is my self-care top notch? I don't think these are a lot of questions that we're initially asking out the gate. But when we do, and we have programs and we have insights and we have honest conversations like we're having right now, that's where we get to create that strong foundation needed to hold our career success as it grows and it expands.
I love it. That executive life coach perspective is so valuable. I wish that every musician seeking to go professional can have that in their lives. And I guess that's why you created the Musician's Journey.
Yeah. No, that's why, that's kind of really how the podcast was born. And we have digital training videos that are free on our website, themusiciansjourney.net, what we would encourage people to check out if they are curious about it. Because I was, as I said, starting out at a young age, another motivation for this was like, man, I wish that support had existed 10 years prior. And it's not even, there is tremendous stuff that exists in kind of crisis support around mental health. If people are burnt out, there are some unbelievable resources, and I'm so thrilled to see things like Music Cares and Help Musicians in the UK. There are so many amazing resources, and what we really have tried to pioneer is, again, what I wish I'd had, where I wasn't in a crisis mode 10 years ago, but I was like, wow, this is like pretty unique. And I'm a hardworking musician. What else can I be doing? I'm practicing my instrument, I'm writing songs, I'm meeting people. There must be something else, because I feel like I'm doing everything right and I don't feel entirely aligned or entirely satisfied. And it wasn't until that I started doing this work with Chelsea and we really refined that I was like, there it is. That was the thing I'd wish I'd had. And that's why there's just such a burning desire to get that in front of as many musicians as possible, so they can kind of work and sharpen those tools as they see fit. Because look, no two situations are going to be the same. We're going to come across similar things in music, but you're going to have different individuals involved at different times based on your own brain chemistry and your own life experience. So, and I'll let Chelsea speak more on this when it comes to kind of our trainings and our message. But as we mentioned, they're all just human pillars, really. So if you can, we try and provide both the practical tools and the things that you might come up against, but then really just dive deeper into that, the roots of what those foundational elements are and how we can continue to rebuild those foundations as our career grows. Because you might think you got it, and then you get to the next level and the next level, and then your foundations need some extra proactive work.
Some tending to.
Absolutely.
Well, and the more... And I think, as all of us reach success, we realize this. There's like this belief of, okay, I got over that and now I'm good. And then there's like a shock when all of a sudden our confidence dips, or all of a sudden this element dips. And we forget that at every step of expansion, we have to pause and strengthen all of those skills and abilities to hold the expansion. What it could hold before is not enough for what we're stepping into now. So it's a really beautiful, testament to us growing, to us succeeding.
Hey, if you enjoy The Career Musician, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, don't be lame, share the game so we can all grow together. Riffing on what you just said, right? You have to change some things. You have to change some behaviors or some actions. So with that being said, when you start touring at 14, that trajectory from 14 to now, 30 something, let's say, that's a long period. So tell us about that. And because when you tour at 14, you can't articulate these things that you need. So obviously you learned a lot of things along the way and you took notes.
Yeah, for the record, touring looked very different at 14 than it did to now. Like touring then was in someone's dad's car because we're kids. but it was like our guitarist dad's car that built it was the sweetest thing in the world. You're smiling at your daughter in the room here. I know for sure you've done this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and we were so lucky to have his support, and yeah, he would drive us around the country from school. We'd finish school in our school uniform, bundle in the van, and drive to. One night we drove to Liverpool, which is like a 5-hour drive from our house in the southwest, and so we went up and played to like. It was wild at the time because of MySpace. Our like pop punk school band could sell 200 tickets in like Scotland, which still blows my mind because for the first 3 years of the Struts, we were selling less tickets than my band at 14, 15, and 16. So
That's
really
incredible.
weird, really bizarre. So as I said, like touring took on a very different shape as joining the Struts and then now touring the world. So I think there's so much novelty when you first start out at that age,
Right.
that you probably don't really. There's so much fun, and I have to be really careful as well when I speak to new musicians. That people are going to learn. People are going to learn their own. They're going to make their own mistakes. They're going to have their own fun, and no one wants to hear that guy be like, "Oh yeah, it's really tough, dude. Like this, you're going to have a really tough time." Like you want people to go in with like wide eyes and that excitement and experience stuff. But if there's any takeaway, it's just like make sure you can just check in on the way, and yeah, as we said, keep those foundations going so that you just position yourself for further long-term success. So yeah, I don't know that I was sitting down on the way back from a gig at 15 years old being like, guys, all right, let's get our journals out and let's document like, do you know what I mean? Like that wasn't the case then as it might be now. Like,
You weren't life thought journaling at that.
I was
in the
not.
back
Some
of the
people
van.
might.
Hey, you know,
People are, yeah.
but like you said, times have changed and a lot of
Yeah.
awareness around these issues have changed, you know,
Yeah.
and it's okay. But you look, growing up back in the day, it was taboo to say anything about mental health. You know, my parents' age and even my age, the Gen X, it was like, hey, man, we didn't really talk about that stuff. You know, so I love the fact that it's so front and center today because it is so important. Now, Chelsea, I was going to ask you, did you ever get bit by the music bug yourself? Or did you just always, because I know your background, you studied marketing in depth and then you went into the executive coaching. Do you have any visual arts or musical arts in your life?
So I mean, outside of the flute in 12th grade band playing on the Disney stage, we had that for a bunch of years, and then I love I'll do sound healing journeys. I've got my wooden flutes that I bought from around the world. So that's kind of the extent in my side of the music expression.
Yeah, and that's where I was going off of that. On the website, you're pictured playing a beautiful wooden flute.
Yeah, so that one was when I was actually in Egypt. Jed said I coached him in those early months, but he additionally, unknowingly, coached me to really step into creativity and all of that. So me playing the wooden flute throughout my journey in Egypt was really inspiration. I remember sending him a picture of it hanging out of my book bag, and I said, "It's coming with me."
That's awesome. You just got to be bold and do your thing, man. I love that.
When it was we were at one of the temples, and I was like, it was Isis's temple, which is like this beautiful spot. And I was sitting there playing, and I shut my eyes, and I just kind of zoned out, and I opened them, and there was like an audience in front of me, and then they were giving me rocks as gifts, and I wasn't really sure of like the custom, but I openly, accepted the rocks, and I love rocks. I've got them all over. So, I think just playing and so that's my music bite maybe.
So look, the musician's journey really encapsulates how these two entities come together: our behaviors, our health, both mental and physical, of course, and the musician struggles. So Jed, let's talk about some music life stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're touring. What have you learned? Let's say top handful of things, 2-3 things that you've learned from touring for this many years. What would you tell? You're looking at a young musician just going in college or getting ready to graduate, and they want to hit the road. Touring rule number 1.
As it relates to touring, I just think I would say pace yourself with regular check-ins.
And when you say check-ins, elaborate.
I mean, ask us. I guess it comes down to self-awareness, really, or just to actually look inwards and be like, okay, what am I feeling right now? Like, what am I in this current moment? Like, how do I feel?
So you would do an autonomous check-in.
Yeah.
And journal about it, or just make mental note?
Now, yeah, I'll do morning pages, and I've meditated every day for 10 years. And that was actually a tool that I discovered when I was really struggling in the early days of the Struts, actually. So that was then what helped me be able to just get that regular time with myself to check in and be like, okay, I don't have to dive into the story of it, but what's going on exactly right now? And then that in turn helped paint a bigger picture that I was able to kind of redirect some things versus getting stuck in the mud, as it were. So I'd say that would be number one top of mind right now. In terms of because that's the best place to start. Everything else will follow once you know what you've got going on.
You have
right?
the proper mindset.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, let's talk about the physical aspect. You're in shape. Are you hitting the gym every morning? Are you doing some Pilates, some yoga? Tell us about that. How do you stay tip top?
That changed over time, and look, I'm 33 now, so maybe that's just a thing when you hit your 30s. You're like, okay,
you have to be more cognizant.
We got to do this.
Yes.
But I do think even much younger musicians will tell you this as well. When you're in a heavy touring schedule, you're going to sleep in a moving vehicle pretty much every night. After giving yourself for 2 hours on stage, whatever you might do, physically and mentally, you are going to be tired. And so I guess it's a case of how can we best position ourselves to acknowledge that it's going to be tricky and there's going to be challenges, but what can we do? This is another bigger point, but there's so many things in the music industry that are out of our control. So what can we do that is within our control? And we can take care of what we put on our bodies in terms of food, drink, in terms of how we work out. Sleep, there's only so much you can do when you're on tour. But at least then, Chelsea and I talk about this a lot, and in our programs about like your sleep routine is going to look different at home and on tour. What can you borrow, little micro things that you can reintroduce that to just make things like that easier, because it is going to be tricky. Micro habits that will compound over time. There you go. The more you do them, right, the easier it becomes, the more you don't even think about it anymore. You get it. It's like you've toured before. So I'm going to zigzag. I'm going to go back and forth between the two of you because there's so many great points that I want to get to. But so obviously I'm going to direct most of the musician stuff towards you, Jed, and more of the life coach stuff, obviously, towards you, Chelsea. So that being said, you said a magic phrase. You said there's so many things out of your control that are out of your control. Chelsea, let's say we're on tour. We get the gig. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I finally got the Olivia Rodrigo tour. Oh my gosh, I'm 22 years old. I'm playing guitar in Olivia Rodrigo's band. We're going on a world tour. I'm so excited. I'm freaking out. I get to the tour destination of where we leave. We all meet at a hotel, wherever we're staying after pre-production rehearsals, production rehearsals. We get ready to leave. We're on the bus. We get there. And the first day, the next time when we get to our city, I miss lobby call. Oh no. The tour manager calls me over and over. They can't get a hold of me. Somehow I finally wake up. I get there. I walk down to the lobby. Everybody's gone. What do I do? Chelsea, how do I deal with that? How do I not lose this gig, this dream gig? He set you up there because I'm like,
Put me on
I know
the
I was
spot
about to
with
say
that one.
that was
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
example though, because I'm like, if I'm the tour manager,
There
I'm
you
going
go.
like, well, yeah, fire their ass, but
Yeah, this fucking kid is done. Now, and obviously there's some luck and happenstance.
So the first thing I would say for anybody in a position, and it could be, okay, you missed lobby call or you messed up or there's another mistake that you've made. The first thing is to get in your center. Because so often in that moment, we leave our body, we leave our center, and we go into thinking this person might think this is we go 5 steps, I'm gonna get let go. And we functioning from that place is not gonna serve us because one, we're in illusion of what the fear elements of our mind are making up. We're not anchored in reality, and we've lost our sense of control in that moment. So the first step would be, instead of freaking out, shaking and calling people, take 3 breaths, feel your feet, sit down, feel your spine, and just, let your body have whatever expression it's going to have. Sometimes it might shake, and that's just releasing the emotion and charge. If you start going into action from that place, that action isn't going to serve you. So the first thing would be center yourself. The second element would be sometimes when we're in that element, it's easy to step into victim. Oh, so-and-so didn't call, my phone. Like we could start coming up with the blaming stories. So once again, just coming back and centering and taking full responsibility and really owning, okay, I messed up, and having compassion for yourself, not letting that inner critic take over control. So it would, the first thing would be center, take responsibility, and then really have positive and supportive thought. This was important. We didn't do this on purpose. Really comforting yourself as though you'd comfort your friend. And then in that moment, after you've centered, after you've claimed the responsibility, after you've talked kindly to yourself, then you say, what is the first small, tiny step that I need to do to make up for this, right? Do I have to call somebody? Do I have to get into an Uber? And you might need to rinse and repeat this over and over, but those are just some anchors that you can lock into.
Don't act impulsively. Take assessment of your own emotions first, then build a plan to get back to, fixing the situation.
Yeah. How many times have we done it the other way around and it didn't work out?
Like I said, I'm a Cuban, Italian, New Yorker. I lead with emotion.
Well, and here, now listen, this is a big thing too. Somebody will be like, well, I'm just so emotional, I couldn't help it. And I was like, there's a difference between being emotional and taking unsupportive acts while you're stuck in emotion. And I think separating those two can be really important.
Brilliant. Which leads me, perfect segue to this next question for you, Jed. In a band setting, how do we keep the peace, the democracy? For instance, in other words, that example with Olivia Rodrigo, that's not a band setting. You're a hired gun. You're a hired backup person, the career musician sideman, if you will. In a band setting like the Struts, it's a democracy. You're equal, right? You're splitting up all of the duties and all the different things that require this engine to continue. Let's say your lead singer just keeps on missing it, man. What's happening? How do you figure out conflict resolution with it? It could be whatever. It could be the bass player. Oh, I'm sorry, not you. Anybody in the band is just like, oh man, you keep doing this.
Never the bass player.
We know never the bass.
Clearly. Things keep happening. How do you address that? How do you sit down? Okay, guys, it's time for family band meeting time. How do you do it?
Oh my God, we killed Kenny. We killed Kenny? Killed Kenny, we're bastards.
The funny thing is, after that impression, I'm like, that's actually kind of what we do. Like, not even kidding.
Okay.
Like, we have to, look, I talk about this a lot. This was one thing I had to come to a realization with, is that even though it's an equal democracy, there is an unwritten hierarchy within band settings. And oftentimes the singer's probably going to be at the top of that, or like the whoever has the voice, that's the one that fans want to meet first. That's the ones the press want to talk to. So that and they do have to take on more responsibility in that sense as well. So I think first, if you're not the singer, identifying that your singer's probably going to need extra support around this, and even though you might be equal on paper, that's probably a good thing to consider. But then the singer should also realize, hey, I have a support network here of people that are like-minded. And you can't do any of that without communication. And so we've been fortunate with our band that and look, it's not been easy. It really hasn't. And candidly, last night we had a family band meeting just to redirect. And it's always I've always been really proud of that's kind of been my role within the band as well. It's like, I'm a all right bass player, but to me, my role in the band is so much more than just being a bass player. And it's like keeping everybody on track, making sure that line of communication is open. And even if it's one person in a band, I feel like that makes the world a difference. And if you can get every single member that is just okay and comfortable with just redirecting sometimes, nobody deliberately fucks up. I don't think. I don't. I mean,
like
maybe.
that. You should be quoted with that. Watch out. That might be one of the clips from this episode.
I mean, take it. That's what I mean. I genuinely don't believe anyone like deliberately fucks up.
Yeah.
In this context. And so how, when that does happen, to Chelsea's point, can we own responsibility if it was something we did?
Yeah.
Be like, guys, this is not what I'm aligned with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And just, communication is everything.
Chelsea, I'm gonna zigzag back to you now. Let's say you're taking the role of family band therapist like Jed, right? And
I don't know if I'll take that title, but yeah, sure.
No, just kidding. But all kidding aside, but you're getting ghosted. There's some communication efforts that you're making, and this particular person or persons are they're not really acknowledging your attempts. How do you deal with that? Something by the way, I'm calling out ghosting on purpose. Let me just, everybody know, if you don't know, I fucking hate ghosting. If you ghost me ever, I'll never work with you again.
It's the lowest form of, there's no communication.
It's ridiculous.
Like, right.
So what do we do, Chelsea? How do we even pick up the pieces at that point?
Yeah. So, and it's going to happen. And especially, from what I hear, it can happen quite a bit in the music industry, from talking to people. And the first element, I'm going to go back to what I said before, if you mess up and miss lobby call time, is check in with yourself. Because if somebody ghosts you, oftentimes we make it very personal and we bring old stories to it without knowing. And then by the time we've realized it's a day and they haven't messaged us, we are furious from like years of people ghosting us, right? So the first thing would take a big breath and look at, I always, look at if it's a pattern of 3 or more times. Have I reached out to them? If it's something important and I've reached out 3 times and they haven't gotten back, then okay, there's ghosting. So let's make sure it's not just old stories. So we first want to confirm we're in fact ghosted. And it's not just, hey, this person doesn't answer texts. They prefer an email or they prefer a phone call. Because a lot of times communication types can really play a matter, but we forget that. Because I will tell you, even my husband will say, dude, he doesn't call me a dude, but he'll say, I text you like 3 days ago. And, he does it, knows I don't always text back. And he's like my number one in life. So you'd think, that he would get one. So first, like making sure that you in fact got ghosted. And then 2, check in with yourself. How important is this connection? If they're not making it as much of an importance as I am, is it still really important to me? And engaging, okay, it's not, so I'm going to let it go. And what do you need to do internally to let it go versus hold it in so that the next time you get ghosted, it's even bigger? Or in fact, you know what, this person is really important. How can I maybe try a different form of communication? Try reaching out to people saying, hey, that connects with them. What's the best method of communication? What do you find they reply back to easiest? Are there times that they don't respond? How should, just getting information and insight rather than taking it personal and either cutting off the opportunity in the person and taking it personal, or over messaging in ways that are just going to make you look like a crazy person too.
I'm so glad you said that. Understanding communication method preferences and habits, right? And in this day and age, we all are at reach 100% of the time. Texting, emails, phone calls, in-app messaging, and it can be intrusive and a little overwhelming, right? But there are protocols. So what I always like to say with the career musician is a phone call is used to really solidify the relationship. A Zoom call or a phone call. You're getting to know that person. You're establishing a rapport. Emails are for business protocols. Hey, here's the tour information. Here's the tour packet with the schedule, all of the day sheets and itineraries. Here's your call times, etc. Texting is for less formal conversation. Hey, man, I'm waiting out front. Okay, I'll be right down. Right? But that may vary for individuals, correct?
We'll add one more in because Chelsea and I pretty much exclusively communicate when we're doing Musician's Journey is voice memos. So
I
that's the
love
fourth
voice
one.
memos.
Everyone does that.
Love
that's like the
voice
fourth
memos.
one. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, what's so funny is one of my business partners despises them.
Oh yeah. Right.
So he goes, man, I hate when you leave me those long voice memos. I never listen to them.
right.
I'm like, you jerk. Why am I leaving you this? So you really have to discover
No,
that.
when Chelsea said that, and it's funny, we only identified this when I taught, and it's funny because I was preaching communication in the last sentence. We only just realized this with our band in the last week. From the chat we had last night, where we just suck in text. Like if we're trying to get something done in texts, because we have our Strictly Struts WhatsApp group, and that's where we do all our communication, especially when some of us might be in the UK. We've all got our family back home, and we split our time between LA and the UK. But we always try and get everything done there. And we realized that actually the frustration we were all feeling was just because we hadn't properly connected, because a couple of the guys just don't communicate via text. But you get them on the call, you chat with them for 5 minutes, problem solved.
And you're like, yo, you're my boy still. I love you. Yay.
Dude, that's it, man. That is it. That's it. So it's
yeah, that's great.
So it's very easy as well for us to kind of be like, well, this works for me, so surely that's the way it goes. But people don't often know what their style is. People often don't know. We talk a lot about in our programs about core values and like what's your kind of compass north for your career.
Yes.
And none of us really, unless you sit down to really give it some real conscious thought, and from a place of, as we say, a place from love versus fear, like conscious-based values, there's a chance you don't really know what actually like your guiding principles are. So in the same way, we might not even know what this thing is. In the same way, we might not know that there are different communication styles, things like that.
All these things are fantastic, especially communication. Speaking of which, so I'm on the way down. I recruited my daughter and her friend in their own rock band to help with production today for this. We had a long production day with a couple of interviews and a jam and all this stuff. I said, guys, tell me some questions. You can ask a rock star anything. What would it be? So guess what the first question they came up with, Jed? You're never going to guess.
Firstly, I'm so excited to hear this, just because this is like, I'm inspired because, again, I was making music at your age, and it's just really, these things are always really fun for me from like somewhat of a selfish point of view. So like I want to be able to help and hope for the answers are actually decent. We'll find out in a second when I stop waffling on. But it's just such an exciting time as a musician.
Yeah.
It's just such an exciting time. So, I mean, I've got no clue. Take me away. What's the first question?
Here we go. You ready? Right. Drum roll, please.
All right.
First question. How do you fire a band member?
Damn.
I know, right?
But
let's say there's issues. There's communication issues. There's things they're not doing. There's marks they're missing, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I've done it twice.
You have?
When I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And it was, I totally feel for everybody involved, because it's so tricky. It's like having like a divorce as a teenager.
Right. Or a breakup, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's, but it doesn't, I would deal with it very differently now than the way I did. But I remember my buddy Henry, who was the guitarist in my first band, he didn't talk to me for 6 months, and we were in the same classes. We like sat next to each other in classes. He didn't talk to me for 6 months. It was really tricky.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
Really, really tricky. And it was because I'd started a different project. So it was kind of more that I left versus firing. But I think I'm interested to hear Chelsea's points on this as well. From my point of view, if it were to happen now, same thing with communication. It would really have to be it would take a lot for that to happen. It would have to be like a real boundary was crossed, for one. It's tough because it depends on the reason as well. We'd have to talk about that.
Well, maybe that's a perfect entry for Chelsea, right?
Yeah, You give your thoughts, Chelsea, because I think it's going to depend on you might have a better answer that's less specific because there's so many elements. It depends what you want to fire them for. Do you want to fire them for you? Do you want to fire them because they actually did something that's to the detriment of the project at whole? Because that's the case. That's a non-negotiable for our band.
Non-negotiable.
If somebody does something that is detrimental to the entire project or is unsafe, puts somebody else at risk, puts somebody else in a bad position, you're out. But we just know that. We just know that as individuals. That would be the only way that I would say that's a definite, you gotta leave the band.
I love the fact that you have an agreed upon, preordained non-negotiables.
Exactly. That's so important because, and also know that when you're in a band environment, you represent, you will be, all your well-being is dependent on everybody else, and you will have to pull your weight in the same way. Sure, the pendulum's going to swing at times, and if somebody really isn't pulling it and it's communicated, you have to have that chat with them about what they really want, and then maybe that's the time you make the natural split. But even just engaging in the conversation first, you're probably going to find out, you might find out that they want to quit. You might find out that they're having a chat in their own head, being like, man, I really want to quit this band, but I've got no idea
how to bring it up.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. You don't know until you dive in. So there's some little bits and pieces, but what are your thoughts, Chelsea?
So, I mean, for me, I'm not going to give like, here's the tips or the, cause I'm sure it's very challenging. I could base it on in my own, corporate lifestyle when I was a manager and I had to fire people, right? It's the same thing, whether it's firing or breaking up in a relationship. But I think some of the elements that as artists, we might forget are more of the foundational business pieces that are put in place that make it a little bit easier. So what I can offer is, hey, here's some pillars that might help that moment become a little bit more manageable. And to Jed's point, he called them non-negotiables, but it's, hey, here's what's the expectations are for our band. Here's the non-negotiables. Setting those up front, you have guidelines and swim lanes for people to play in. So when they cross it, it's not, oh, that's not okay for our band and I didn't know that. It's, hey, we've all agreed to this from the beginning. So it makes the conversation more fact-based and more, it's still emotional, but it's less, I don't think that's appropriate, and is, hey, we all agreed and signed on this line that that's not okay and that's not appropriate. The other element is, yes, sometimes there's a moment that somebody does something drastic and we have to do a kind of an immediate fire. But I think also over time, it's repeated behaviors. And when we wait a year later to have those conversations, it becomes really hard. So catching the behaviors up front and having open conversations before it is a, hey, you're fired. It's, hey, I'm noticing a pattern of X and I'm curious where that's coming from. Hey, it's new. Do you have something going on? Like reaching out from support and curiosity, and so like really sticking with the facts.
Here's a question for both of you. Do you do this in isolation with that person and one-on-one? Or do you do it as a band? You're having problems with the bass player again.
Classic.
Does everybody sit down and say, hey, Jed? Because then the bass player could feel like you're ganging up on them.
I think it depends on in my opinion, I would say it depends on their communication style. If there's somebody that might feel more attacked when it felt there was everybody, then maybe not. Mm-hmm. Unless it felt quite like intervention based, in which case it was like, hey, we're all here because we all care about you. What's going on? Because this behavior is tricky. Or do you know what I mean?
Right.
I think that time would probably be everybody. But depends on the personality and depends on the relationship you have with them. And if there's somebody that has like a better, we have one guy on our camp that is, that has worked with us for years, has worked in merch. He's like a bit of a Swiss Army knife in the Struts camp. He has some really unique relationships with people in our crew and even in the band that sometimes we'll go to him and be like, hey, bro, is there any chance you could just have like this little conversation and just like get a feel on things? Because people have very unique relationships and people they might trust more, or again, it depends on the personality. Because some people might be super open and will tell you everything.
Yeah.
And in that case, you're kind of like, okay, that's maybe an easier conversation to have.
Sure.
But you might have somebody that really is not comfortable at all with sharing any kind of vulnerability, and putting them in a group situation might be really intimidating. Whereas if it's someone you know they trust, that can have it and is really going to listen to them and they don't feel manipulated, you're probably going to get to the core of what's going on, then be able to discuss with everybody what comes next.
It makes perfect sense just from speaking from the individual personality types. You and I hit it off right away. You're very personable.
That's you, my friend.
Easy communicator, but not everyone's like that. And in this business, it is such a people-driven business. There's so much interpersonal relationships happening. You really have to navigate these waters of being aware.
One thing I will say on that, so I don't want to cut off your answer, Chelsea, but in a band setting, this is one thing I love about being in a band, is that if you identify everybody's natural strengths and things they gravitate to and natural weaknesses, you can then work together to if it's press things, if somebody's tired or somebody doesn't feel like that, somebody else can step in and do that part, but you have the communication and you fill each other's strengths and weaknesses. It's what a good team does. A good sports team does that. A good sports
team.
Yeah, right.
That's why there's positions.
Yeah, exactly. And within positions, there are roles that they have within that team as well. It's, I think, the same in a band. And I have mad respect for solo artists, but even then, you'll still get your band, and hopefully your band members keep the gig.
Right.
And you get to be around them a long time, and they're your family as well.
And you're developing those relationships.
Exactly. So that's kind of how I look at it. It's like, if you're not somebody that is naturally is maybe just more shy. Not that you're not personable, you might be a really lovely human, but you just find the person in your project that can offer more of that, and they can teach you some stuff. You can communicate together, you can carve that out together.
All right, so Chelsea, something that we were talking in the pre-pro meeting the other day, and I had shared with you what a deep affinity I have for people like yourself do what you do. The executive life coaching, what used to be referred to often as motivational speaking in a way, although I think that's different from the actual life coaching, because it seems like you're really digging into the behaviors and lifestyle and the actions and habits that one develops. So tell us more about, your coaching principles. You had mentioned some pillars that you established early on.
Yeah, so a lot is, I've been coaching for over 15 years. I say I started coaching before it was cool. Before that, I was a manager at Disney. So I was in the advertising, marketing, kind of tech companies for a while in my past life. So I was able to bring some of that knowledge into coaching, but realizing that it's just fundamental human elements that all of my clients across many industries came from. And those pillars are confidence, communication, work-life balance, and emotional intelligence. I ran a one-year research program to really help identify what business professionals say are the pillars of thriving. And those were some of the core elements that came out of it. And at the time, there weren't a lot of companies or even industries addressing that. And so that's where my passion came within those. I also feel that when we seek personal development, when we seek professional development, oftentimes we spend too much time looking at the surface levels. And what I mean by that is we're looking at, this is how my root issue is projecting itself today. And we can apply Band-Aid solutions over and over to minimize those. But if we aren't looking at what was the root cause of this, we're going to have to keep applying those Band-Aids over and over. But if we can address and get to the root cause, then all of a sudden the surface issues no longer exist. And ironically, I will tell you, after many years and hundreds of one-on-one sessions around the world, most of those core things happen before the age of 8. And, so a lot of the things that I like about the programs that Jed and I offer is that they give larger teachings, but then they have a supportive workbook that asks really deep questions that helps individuals get to those initial core blocks. So we're not just giving you Band-Aid approaches that you're applying over and over again.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love how you're going to the root, the core there. Let me also say this, in doing some studying, you have quite the story. I always tell people, how did I get Nomad, the moniker? Well, by the time I was 25, I've had more than 20 physical addresses. But your story is much different and much more impactful. By the time you were 20, you had some serious struggles. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I always say by the time I was 20, I beat death 3 times. I was in a pretty serious car accident. And then I had diagnosed with 2 different kinds of cancer during college, and absolutely sent me for a loop. And in my naive 19-year-old, life, beat it and got through it. But after that, I was like, I'm gonna really kick ass in life. Like, I'm going to nail this life thing because I don't know when it's going to end. And I went out on a mission. I graduated college. I studied abroad, moved to LA, jumped into the advertising industry. I became president of a nonprofit organization. I was doing sales for a promotions company, and things were really good. When I was in the rooms, I was the youngest by far. But oh my God, if I didn't feel empty and like there was a big gap. My life on paper looked fantastic. I had a great relationship, great spot that I was living in, but there was a gap. And I think so often we can be afraid to explore that gap because it's like, oh, well, if this isn't it, if what looks great on paper isn't what's going to fulfill me, then what the hell is it? And I think even as artists or musicians or any creatives, right, we set out that this is going to be the thing. And then when we get there, if there's a gap, there could be fear in that. So I dove in and I leaned into the fear. I got into life coaching or executive coaching and really worked on my own journey and really hit all of these pillars that came out of what helps somebody thrives, which led me into a career of fulfillment and joy and excitement. And wherever I can give that back to somebody else is really something that I strive to do. And it's an evolution. There's always a next thing. Mad, you talk about the beyond, and the beyond is, I believe, human evolution. So if we're ever just, this is it, I think we're missing out on a lot.
I love how you and Jed both are aligned. Again, Jed always says, how can I be of service? And that's basically what you're echoing here as the culmination of that.
Yeah. And and with that being of service, I just want to share with all creatives and anybody on here too. I think the first person we get to be at service to is our creative selves. And that is the first element of our truth, our authenticity, and anything that comes out from that place. And then secondarily, I hope that helps others in their journey as well. But that seems to be the secret sauce of keeping the passion going.
Amazingly said. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us today on The Career Musician. We're going to let you go because I know you're busy. And listen, the value that you brought today is amazing.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing the jam session.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad.
Hey, Nomad here, the host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast. And my mission is to empower you with actionable strategies to get the gig, keep the gig, go beyond the gig, and make music your business. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, I'm here to help guide you through the challenges and opportunities that the industry has to offer. Got questions or need advice? Let's make it happen. Use hashtag AskNomad on socials, and I'll answer them right here on the show. Tune in, ask away, and let's turn your passion into your profession. So, Jed, bringing it back around to the Struts. I mean, look, you guys are a band on the move, a burgeoning movement that I want to say earlier from what you were filling me in on, you guys really are bringing back rock and roll in its truest sense, man. Can you tell us about the impetus of the Struts, how you got in there, and just everything Struts?
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It's really funny because that was always our kind of our why and our mission in 2015 when we signed. We've been a band for 3 or 4 years prior in the UK. Wasn't really happening for us in England, honestly.
Really?
We were in we played a 3 to 50 people, like a night in pubs. And we ended up playing, I think we were in a pub in Scunthorpe in England which is the only town that has CUNT as consecutive letters in the name of it, which summed up like our mental state at the time. And honestly, we were there like ready to pack it in. We were just like, this is
really,
yeah. We just thought it's not connecting. And I was struggling personally with what I'd mentioned earlier, that I played that same pub to hundreds of people, the same venue, Lincoln Imp in Scunthorpe in the north of England. And so there was also this, because I'd then left other bands to join this band, and we were just not in a great spot.
Yeah.
And this is still the career-defining moment, if I'm honest with you. But we got invited to open for the Rolling Stones in Paris, and we found out that night backstage. So we were in this venue all upstairs, and then our manager at the time, down to the fact that we had committed to touring in France a lot more than England, because we were getting more radio play there. So while we were playing these pubs in England, we were simultaneously playing to like 200, 300, 400 caps in France. And so we'd built up this momentum, and got invited to open for the Stones. That was 10 days after that phone call, because somebody else had dropped out.
And this is the year circa
2013, I want to say.
2013. Okay.
And so 2015 is when we signed in the USA. For some reason, we always have, we're always so proud to be an English band. We love going back to England. We're going back to the UK on this next tour coming up in the year, and playing some really amazing venues with a couple of thousand fans. Like we're thrilled that we get to do that back home now. And one story I always tell, I think I mentioned this recently, is that Could Have Been Me, which is our song that has like, I think hundreds of millions of streams, insane. Went platinum recently, which in this day and age for a rock band, we were like, God, that's cool.
That's cool.
That's really cool. And so we would play that same song, exactly the same version, in pubs for 3 years to like 40 people. And so the same version that now is like the moment of that's like the encore song. It's the song that still, it was our kind of demi hit that has meant that we've been able to still keep up a following, even though nothing's charted quite as high as that. We still have a fan base, and people are still just discovering that song, and they're being like, wow, there's this this rock band that are kind of doing everything that. What's really fun, there's the nostalgia for the generation that grew up with it. Then there's all of this whole new audience that are hearing that kind of music for the first time and being like, whoa, this is the freshest thing I've ever heard. And so what we now have is very, very confusing for people that are trying to market our band at our labels and press outlets, because they see our crowds and they're like, there's 6-year-old kids that know Could Have Been Me from Sing 2, because we had a big sync feature in that, up to 70-year-olds that live through some of the greatest eras of music, and they just live and breathe and love it.
They just love the rock and roll essence of what you do.
Exactly. So it's so special, man. It's one thing, it sounds very cliche, but we talk a lot about human connection.
Yeah.
There's no better manifestation than when you're putting on a show and you've got like multi-generational fans that come because they want to connect with you because they like your music. That to me is the coolest thing in the world.
Hey, for those who might not be aware, when Jed mentioned that they had a sync deal in the movie Sing 2, that simply means that they had one of their songs featured in the film. In this case, it was Could Have Been Me, their smash hit, covered by Halsey. Now, sync stands for Synchronization Licensing Deal, which means they get paid. Earlier, speaking of cool, you were telling me a Foo Fighters story. Dave and Taylor come into the dressing room.
It's our non-rock and roll story.
Knock over all the laptops. What is this crap?
No, we were joking about having our laptops on here, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just every backstage ever. And then, recounting the time we were on tour with the Foo Fighters for about 18 months. And Taylor, dude, honestly, the best times of my life.
I can't even imagine. I can only fathom.
Minus my wedding day, of course, and then beyond. Like we're still on it. We still have so much fun. We go on tour this year, or this in 2 weeks' time. But with
the guys came backstage.
They came in the room.
They see everybody, all the laptops open.
We're playing Uno. It was like the least rock and roll thing ever, and it was like both Taylor and Dave just like, fuck me, guys. Like, is this what rock stars do now? This is pathetic. Like, so good.
At The Career Musician, we're dedicated to providing the best strategies and solutions for your music career. To make sure we're addressing your unique needs and meeting the challenges that you face, we'd love to get your input. Take a few minutes and fill out this quick survey to let us know what areas you're looking to improve and the topics you're most interested in. Your feedback will help us tailor our content and offer the most relevant solutions for your career journey. Go to thecareermusician.com to take the survey and make music your business. I mean, you've toured the world with the Stones, the Foo Fighters, Guns N' Roses, some of the biggest acts, most memorable. I mean, it's so hard. A memorable moment where you're just like, you literally had to pinch yourself. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm experiencing this right now.
The Stones was a big one, just because it was such a stark contrast from the gigs we were playing at that time.
Yeah.
80,000 people in Paris. 80,000 to do. It's still insane. There was that, and I remember looking up at a plane going over.
Yeah.
And I'm so freaked out.
Yeah.
I'm like, just play it so I can play my bass. Just don't mess up.
Don't mess up.
Mix listening. I was like, and I just remember looking up and seeing this airplane go over the stadium and just thinking about how tiny we looked as little ants. And I'm like, I'm vibrating everybody's seat in this.
That's right.
In this stadium. I was just like, this is. That's still one. I mean, we've been so lucky to have so many real crazy moments, but the reason that one stands out is because it was just such a contrast from what we were doing. And don't get me wrong, the following week after the Stones gig, I wasn't earning money in the band. As when we all know about this as musicians, we do it because we love it and we always hope that we're going to make some money from it eventually.
You weren't earning money in the band?
No. None of us were. I think we were making like $200 a month. That was less than that, I think. Either way. And I don't think that was from the band. That's because we had other little endeavors. So we would do these like promo jobs. So the week after, I was dressed in like a sandwich board, handing out dish soap to students on the streets of Bristol. And I've told the story before, but I remember this girl came up and she was like another college student in the town. And she was like, so what do you do when you're not handing out dish soap? And it was like very sweet, like getting to know somebody. I was like, you're not going to believe what I did last weekend. And she didn't believe me at all.
Wow.
And why should she, man? I'm handing out dish soap. Who's to know that I just played to 80,000 people in Paris? And that to me is like what the music industry is about. You have to be okay with those swings and knowing that you can go from super high to being humbled very quickly. And it's the fun of it. It's what we call rock and roll. Which also just means when things go tits up a little bit.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Right.
Ebbs and
there you go.
flows.
There you go. Yeah.
I always used to say when I would come off the road and go home to being domesticated again, so you want to be a rock star? Start by cleaning the fucking garage.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh, the garage is a mess. Okay, well, I was a
Yeah.
rock star 24 hours ago on stage, but now I got to clean the damn garage.
I love it. That's one thing when I've chatted to other dads in bands, saying the second he gets home, been out like doing this world tour. You are dad
you're
now.
Dad. You're
dad
Mr.
now.
Dad.
So I always love that story. I was just like, yep, that makes sense. You're not a rock star anymore. You're dad at home and you're doing everything a dad should do. You know what I mean?
Hey to all my Los Angeles musicians. Are you ready to take your sound to the next level? Well, PA Rehearsal Studios, proud sponsor of The Career Musician, is your go-to spot. With top-notch equipment and expert audio engineers, they will ensure you sound like a pro every time you rehearse. And trust me, I've been to a lot of rehearsal studios, and this place is dope. It's clean and it's got great vibes, plus awesome equipment. In fact, this very episode with Jed Elliott from the Struts is being recorded at PA Rehearsal Studios in Los Angeles. And for a limited time, you can enjoy an exclusive 20% discount on your next booking. Just use code TCM20 when you book. That's TCM20 for a 20% off discount at PA Rehearsal Studios. Don't miss this amazing opportunity. Be sure to call PA Rehearsals at 818-975-8434 or visit PARehearsalstudios.com to elevate your rehearsal game now. That's PA Rehearsal Studios, and be sure to use code TCM20. You see a person who wants to be a rock star, a young person. They're coming up. They're all the right things. What's the word of advice?
I would say that you're so fortunate to be this young and have that dream, because that dream is one of the most magical things that you're going to experience, something that is not just going to last a year or two. If you're really keen about this, you're so fortunate just out the gates that you have that passion, because that passion means that you're always going to want to write and create, and it's going to bring you so much joy through life. And know that on that journey, you're going to face some very unique challenges in this line of work. So do what you can early on to kind of proactively prepare for some of the things that you might face. And it's going to, as I said, look different for everybody. I feel that about like opportunity business-wise, but I think also just in terms of like our mental well-being and what we do, what our cues are naturally, how we respond to certain situations. Preparing and building the foundations for those skills, as well as just like what should we say in the meeting and how should we do that. Do you see what I mean? But that's a big part of what the musician's journey is about. So yeah, so listen to the Musician's Journey podcast.
Where can everybody find the Musician's Journey podcast online and all of your socials?
themusiciansjourney.net. Find everything there. You'll find the resources that you can access for free with workbooks. Our podcast is linked from there. Then all the socials are at Musicians Journey Official. And so we would love to hear from all of Nomad's wonderful listeners. Yeah, just appreciate you, dude. Thank you.
You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with Nomad. Download, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. The Career Musician Podcast is a member of the Pantheon Podcast Network, the first all-music-based podcast collective. For more info, visit pantheonpodcasts.com.
Credits for this episode: Nomad, creator, host, composer, sound design, mixing, mastering, engineer. Founders of The Musician's Journey: Jed Elliot, guest from the Struts as himself; Chelsea Sabo, guest, founder of Verbal Courage as herself; Yuri Kozen, recording engineer; Patricio, assistant engineer; and for the video pod coming soon, Nina Rapole, director of photography and guitarist; Patricio, singer; Randy Burrell, director; Meg, owner of PA Rehearsal Studios; Joel Meza, drummer and production assistant.